Welcome to Traveling with Glenn, a series of bicycle touring adventures designed to educate, to entertain, and to inspire the viewer. I am your host, Glenn Davis. Today's adventure is the PacificCrest Bicycle Trail, a route which spans the length of the Cascade Range, the Sierra Nevada Mountains, the San Gabriel Mountains, and the San Bernardino Mountains, from Washington State to California. You are about to view part 2 of the PacificCrest Bicycle Trail. We are now in California. This is the Klamath River. Mount Shasta, elevation 14,179 feet, is the second highest mountain of the Cascade Range and potentially active. And another view of Mount Shasta. Burney Falls is 129 feet high. On the day I reached Burney Falls, the temperature rose to 105 degrees. Hat Creek in Lassen National Forest. We are in Lassen Volcanic National Park. This is Manzanita Lake. Many of the Western national parks advise visitors not to feed the bears. And while there are signs saying, "Do not feed the bears," I say it's okay to feed the biker. I had a lot of fun wearing that t-shirt in campgrounds, especially around supper time. Lassen Peak, elevation 10,457 feet, began erupting in 1914 and had a major eruption in 1915, which caused a national sensation. This was America's volcano. It was what Mount St. Helens became 2 generations later. Few people could remember the last volcanic eruption in the continental United States. People who had never heard of Lassen Peak soon familiarized themselves with this remote part of Northern California. Lassen Peak and Summit Lake. I mentioned earlier that Cascade Range volcanoes erupt much more explosively than their Hawaiian relatives. This is in part because Hawaiian or shield volcanoes contain basaltic lava, which is lower in silica and thus more fluid, causing the lava to flow outward from the vent. Cascade Range volcanoes, on the other hand, contain andesite lava, which has a higher percentage of silica and greater amounts of explosive volcanic gases and water under great pressure. When that pressure builds, the volcano becomes a giant steam boiler. Lake Helen. At this point, the Cascade Range ends and the 400-mile-long Sierra Nevada Range begins. Sierra Nevada is Spanish for snowy mountains. Sunrise at Lake Tahoe. At 1,645 feet deep, Lake Tahoe is the second deepest lake in the United States, exceeded only by Crater Lake. Lake Tahoe is 12 miles wide, 22 miles long, and has 72 miles of shoreline. And here is an example of a spectacular butte. And notice the landscape. It has gotten much drier than when we were in Washington State. The courthouse, built in 1880 in the town of Bridgeport, California. And we see another view of the very dry landscape. There's sagebrush in the foreground And where there are trees, this is the low spot in the land where water will tend to collect and allow trees to take root and thrive. But on the higher sections of the land, it's very sparse vegetation. Mono Lake is a shallow salt lake. The rock formations are called tufa, which is a form of limestone. And here we see the front range of the Sierra Nevada mountains. Ellery Lake. Saddlebag Lake. Tioga Lake. Tioga Pass, elevation 9,945 feet, is the east entrance of Yosemite National Park. It is the highest elevation on the PacificCrest bicycle trail. My bike is fully outfitted for long-distance touring. Spanning the front wheel is a rack which supports panniers or saddlebags on either side of the wheel. On top of the rack is a handlebar bag. Spanning the rear wheel are two more panniers, and then on top of all of that is a backpack. In addition, I carry 3 water bottles, and there is a tire pump, and also a rear view mirror and a computer. I carried a few changes of clothing, a number of tools and spare parts, tent, and sleeping bag. This is Tuolumne Meadows. The idea for a national park dates back to the 1860s. Over decades, the lands that make up the park today came together through the persistence of John Muir and other naturalists. Yosemite became a national park in 1906. Siesta Lake. We are looking at Yosemite Valley. Rivers carve V-shaped valleys. Glaciers carve U-shaped valleys. And this is a fine view of a glacial valley. This is El Capitan, Spanish for the chief. El Capitan is one of the most iconic landmarks in Yosemite Valley. It is solid granite, 3,000 feet high. During the last ice age, sheets of ice covered all but the crown of El Capitan. It is one of the longest sheer drops in the world. Rock climbers come from all over to challenge the mighty El Cap, and a deer taking a drink from the Merced River. Its hard granite is volcanic in origin. The Yosemite region was covered by the ocean to the west of the continental shelf. Over time, soil and lava were deposited and then carried far below the Earth's surface through the subduction process. They were subjected to intense heat, melted, crystallized, and metamorphosed several times into the hard granite which we see today. Eventually, through folding and uplifting, the granite began to be pushed up, much as the Rocky Mountains and Himalayas were formed. While camping in Yosemite Valley, I met several backpackers who had been out on the trails for a number of days. And one of them told me the story about their campsite being invaded by black bears several nights. The bears, of course, were looking for food, but most savvy backpackers keep their food in bear barrels, which the bears can't open. However, the bears did tear their backpacks apart. The backpackers reported to me that the bears got into their coffee but wouldn't eat it. Apparently, they don't like the taste of it. So while talking with Andy, he was mending his shredded backpack. His backpack, which the bears clawed apart like it was a paper sack, was made of heavy-duty Cordura nylon. And this he was repairing using dental floss. And experienced backpackers understand that ordinary thread is not strong enough to support the weight that they carry in backpacks. So they use dental floss for emergency repairs. Vernal Falls is 317 feet high. This is Half Dome as seen from a non-traditional view. We see Half Dome reflected in the Merced River. Half Dome is one of the iconic features of Yosemite Valley. It got its name because much of it was sheared off during the last ice age. We are viewing El Capitan from a non-traditional view. After leaving Yosemite National Park, I stopped at Bass Lake. We are in Sequoia and Kings Canyon National Park. This is the General Grant sequoia, also known as the nation's Christmas tree. Sequoias are not the tallest trees. That distinction goes to the coastal redwoods. Sequoias are not the biggest in diameter. The record is held by the Thule cypress. Sequoias are not the oldest living things on Earth. The bristlecone pine lives longer than anything. But for sheer mass, the sequoia is the largest living thing on Earth. And to think that it all begins with small seed cones and seeds the size of rolled oats. There are over 91,000 seeds to a pound. This is a view of Kings Canyon National Park. Sequoias only grow naturally in 75 groves in the southern Sierra Nevada mountains. Yet you don't have to travel to California to see them. They grow in many states as the results of transplanting or growing from seed. It might surprise you that sequoias grow in Connecticut. In fact, the largest sequoia in the state is thriving in Glastonbury. This is the General Grant sequoia. It is 275 feet tall, 36 feet in diameter, 2,700 years old, and weighs 1 million pounds or 500 tons. It is the biggest living thing on Earth. Sequoias live as long as they do, in part because their bark, which can grow to 18 inches thick in mature trees, is impervious to insects. Forest fires do little damage because the bark burns poorly. In 1876, a sequoia was cut down and a 20-foot diameter cross-section was shipped to Philadelphia for the nation's centennial. Disbelieving Easterners labeled it the California hoax. The sequoias survived exploitation because of their remote location and the fact that their brittle wood is of little commercial value. The only natural event that can kill a mature sequoia is for the ground beneath it to become unstable. If the tree lists a little, powerful winds from winter storms can topple it. As we drop down from the mountains and into the lowlands, the land gets very dry. These are very rugged mountains, and the bicycling is strenuous. I camped one night in the woods in a national forest, a short distance from a National Forest Service campground. And while relaxing in the evening after supper, I heard a loud crashing noise in some nearby brush. I thought at first that it was a camper scrounging for firewood. Then I saw a large black object emerge from the brush. It was an adult black bear heading straight for my camp. Now I know that bears have outstanding sense of smell. Their eyesight is not very good, however. So this bear probably smelled some food from my campsite. So I scrambled up on top of a rock. I waved my arms around and yelled, "Hey bear! Hey bear!" And that bear, upon hearing my voice, turned around and ran back into the brush, and that was the last I ever saw of that bear. The Kern River and mountains. On some days, the temperature reached 105 degrees, making the water in my bottles nearly undrinkable. The heat coming off the road not only made the water hot, but almost burned my feet. Lake Isabella. Note how low the water is. This is the result of several years of drought. This is very dry country as we near the southern end of the Sierra Nevada mountains and approach the Mojave Desert. I camped for a few nights at a campground in Tehachapi. The campground used to be a cattle ranch, and now they have many animals on display. And this is a peacock and a young donkey. And sunset in Tehachapi. These windmills at Oak Creek Pass are part of an electricity generating plant. Silverwood Lake. This is a view of the rugged San Gabriel Mountains, which are north and east of Los Angeles. We see Lake Elsinore and some of the Inland Empire. Sunrise in the San Bernardino Mountains. At this point, I left the PacificCrest bicycle trail after 2,600 miles and headed for Huntington Beach, where I relaxed with friends before flying home. Thank you for viewing Traveling with Glenn. Be sure to tune in to each and every adventure as we tour this fascinating world. Until then, I wish you happy trails.